Patanjeru for our colleagues from Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm going to give a quick presentation on the works of the Impact Assessment Office. As you noted that in my in the DG's introduction, it looks like kind of a one-man operation, but after my presentation, you realize that almost all of us are here involved in one way or the other in strengthening the culture of impact at ICRISAT. Just an introduction of my presentation. Basically, I'm going to demonstrate how we are enhancing the culture of impact at ICRISAT. I will not go into explaining or defining what is impact. We all know what is impact, what changes our work is doing to the women and men of the poor regions of this world. The Impact Assessment Office is basically guided by a procedural guideline, institutionalized guidelines on protocols of implementation of ex-post impact assessment studies. I've highlighted ex-post impact assessment studies. I'll show the difference because we all do impact assessment one way or the other, but the office has a specific mandate to look at ex-post studies, and so far we have done over different stages of the first set, which is 9 studies based in both Asia and in Sub-Saharan Africa, and we have already identified 6, which is set 2. But I would also say that as we are now adopting the CRPs, there are also some areas or topical areas that come in between the first 2 sets that we might prioritize in also engaging to carry out a quick impact assessment studies as the time and request arises. Also, the Impact Assessment Office is coordinating a very important activity, measuring returns to research investment. I'll also talk about that and the expectations of the week. Ex-post impact assessment. This is ex-post, done mostly assumed after the adoption of the study or the project, and in most cases, it's well after the project has ended. There's some issues related to that in terms of recall and so on, and also data management. What I would want to emphasize here is the need to establish a database or a culture of data management. Dilip has already mentioned issues on the data management. We all need to collect data in a systematized way as we progress in our research, so that by the time we get to the ex-post impact assessment, we have the data, we all have the data. We don't have to, when we hire external consultants, at times it's difficult where we don't have any baseline from where to start. Some of you that we have already been involved in such studies, you appreciate that at times it's easy to just pull out a study upon request of the consultant, but at times it can be very difficult when we don't have any basis for estimating what has changed since the project started. And all this is explained in the impact cycle. As you can see, are we doing this? Where do we stand? We are all somewhere within the impact cycle. And basically it starts from the baseline. And also, I had a lot of discussions in the last 2-3 weeks, and also last week when I was in Australia with Cynthia, where we have the importance of the priority settings. That's where ex-ante impact assessment stands. We all do that. When we were working on the CRPs, then it was 3.5 and 3.6. There was a lot of discussions on the priority settings, and all of us, one way or the other, were involved into that. That moves into project development. Then when the project starts, we're all in our research project, then the on-farm evaluations, and we do adoption studies. There's a difference there. When we're discussing, and I had lots of consultations when I had to put through to the management, what is the next set of the impact assessment studies? Topics I get is adoption and impact, or impact and adoption, or adoption. I remember the DG specifically telling us in one of the meetings that no, the focus is ex-post. There has to be a difference. Ex-post and adoption studies, those are different. The impact cycle will show that. We can discuss that as we go along, but I needed that to be very clear. But again, it is important to notice the feedback process. The ex-post assessment will also feed back into the evaluation process, and also it's important to do the priority settings. We cannot underestimate the importance of this exercise. There is we also have a generic type of objectives. Of course, we appreciate that each study has its own, might have some specific objectives, topical areas, but the institute has certain objectives that we need to follow through. When I come through discussing or traveling within the region, looking or discussing the results of the studies, there's some certain issues that we need they should stand out clear. Are we quantifying, measuring the impacts, qualifying the impacts of our research projects? Is it there in the report? Also, we have the important, what we call 6 institutional outcomes in the strategic meetings that we had in the last 2 years, in the reports and so on, in the business plan. We have the 6 institutional outcomes: self-sufficiency, intensification. Most important, we have already discussed about capacity building. Chandra will talk about the gender issues. Do we see that? Are we contributing to that? What impact we have? Those we need to see them in the documentation of the report. So those are the kind of things that when I sit down with the hired consultant, we emphasize we need to see that. But over and above all, again, getting back to the presentation of the DG in the last meetings last week and today, the impact pathway, where is it? Are we able to describe it? We need to see that. I also give a presentation into that. And also, finally, when we close the project or the project has been adopted and so on, what are the returns to? The donors want to see this, to measure the returns to the project investment. What has been our investment returns to that? The donors will come and ask. We also we need to use that to market ourselves. I'll just quickly go through the studies that are underway for the planning purposes of the coming week, and also the need to see the timeline bounds. This is critical. We have had some good start to some, we've had some bit of a slow start to some for obvious different reasons, but we've done quite a lot in the last year. These are the 3 that out of set 1 are still ongoing. Some are almost completed. We just completed the groundnut project. We are almost at the stage of finalizing the write-up of the Pigeon Pea in Tanzania. And we are in good progress in Zimbabwe, the microdosing, although we have to start again the same project in West Africa because it's 2 split on the microdosing, Zimbabwe and Niger. And also, we still have a back and forth in improving on the terms of reference and on the seed assessment in West Africa. So we need to, the respective focal points, we need to agree, finalize on the way plan. All of you are, or most of these people not here are aware of what needs to be done, and we're going to complete it. These are the set 2 studies. Like I mentioned, well, there's another one that is, I think it has just disappeared, which is village level studies. I think is the 6th one. These are the ones that are targeted for this year. I would say we need to have done good progress by by the first half of this year. This is a study on chickpea in Myanmar, and the watershed program is an offshoot of the main impact assessment studies that we did, and we realized that we needed to refocus. So we're going to do a focus study on the Lucheba watershed in China, and also we have excitement in the IBI that it has been something that has been on the planning cards for some time, and we are working on that, finalizing the impact assessment of the agribusiness incubation, and also the 2 research on sorghum projects in Mali and Tanzania. Just a quick through of so that you appreciate what we're talking about when we quantify. Just a look at what we saw or what is coming out of the watershed impact study. When we say quantitative impacts, we're looking at issues like the environment, how much soil, what does it translate into soil conserved, what does it translate into money value, additional income per crop, is it increasing 400 hectares, 400 tons per hectare. We're looking at the livestock issues, increase in milk production from 2.5 to 4.5 liters as a result of the intervention of the watershed management project. And above all, ICRISAT management and the donors want to see returns to investment and the viability of this, economic viability of this. That's when we start talking of the benefit cost and internal returns to internal rate of returns. So, for example, in the Andhra Pradesh watershed management, we're looking at $608 million US over the last 10 years. This is what, the last 2 is what we can give to the DG to talk to the to the donors. This is what the donors want to see. This is what we need to document. So it is very important. We need to do that. We need to quantify that. But also there's also issues like institutional level impacts. For example, the HPRC, that is the Hybrid Parent Research Institute. This was split into Part A and Part 2. Part A looks into more or less like institutional level impacts. I'll give you an example. Like for example, we see what ICRISAT-bred parents dominating the hybrid development in India.
through the consortium, maybe with the exception of sorghum in NARS, but you can see more than 50% of the coming from ICRISAT-bred hybrids. But also, qualitatively, we could talk of the benefits out of the research. We can sell this to the donors. We can talk about this. We're looking at the utilization of the hybrids and the technical data that the HPRC consortium or within the trials, and also ICRISAT. You remember the impact cycle. We're talking of the cycle with the feedback. Also, ICRISAT benefits out of this in getting feedbacks on the performances of our parental lines and getting access to test locations. And obviously, the farmers also benefit in terms of income through increased hybrids and use of high-yielding hybrids and access to dual-purpose hybrids, which can also be used as grain and fodder. And also, there's lessons learned out of the impact assessment studies. For example, there's been lots of discussion in terms of the membership fee that is ICRISAT received or that is charged to the consortium, and there's either do we have to increase or reduce, or what fee that we need to attract more members. And an example of documenting impact pathways, I pull out this out of the impact assessment of the HHB 67 improved in Northwest India. This is what the impact pathway would want to see. A lot of you were involved in the CRP 5 and 6, and lots of talk of ideals. Where do we stand? You know, we start from the development of the down mildew-resistant pure millet, where ICRISAT seed parent is involved, and some restorer parents coming from somewhere, and developing the hybrid, and involvement of the NARS in partnerships. Partnerships is very important. Public and moving into public and private partnerships, we get research outcomes, things like research partners being enhanced in the use of qualities and short incubation period and so forth. Then we move into development outcomes. Are the farmers adopting, and farmers improving diversity and employment generation? From there, then we talk of impact. Environment, more resilient farming systems, improvement in food security, improvement, the issue of gender and equity. These are the things that we document, and all this should be seen in a pathway. This is the impact pathway, so we need to document that. So when we're talking of impact assessment studies and documentation of the impacts, these are the kind of things that we anticipate and expect, and these are the things that this critical focus area has to look into. Quantifying, measuring institutional effects, and also the impact pathways, and measuring returns to investment. What do we do with the results? It's not only for academic purposes. Yes, we need to get the results for feedback purposes for the researchers. The research management or administration needs to have this documentation or documents of impact justifying why we got the monies, and the donors need to see money well spent. Policymakers use impact assessment studies for policy changes and measurements. Right now, we're talking of something that we call ICRISAT policy briefs that we can share around with the policymakers. But these things, at times, they have to be documented in different formats, because a report to us researchers might not be well understood by a policymaker. So we also, the Impact Assessment Office, who is coordinating the reproduction of these policy results into more appropriately documented briefs that can be read or easily read by people with no time or busy or might not be of the subject area, but still appreciate the work of ICRISAT that we are doing. All this work is going into the Impact Assessment Office website. It's almost developed. It's there. Maybe by the end of the week it will be running. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is some of you have seen an email coming from me and some from the DG that seems to add a little bit of responsibilities, but it's important that we emphasize this during the course of this planning week. I've had numerous meetings with a lot of you who are based here in terms of how we measure the returns to investment of some of the work that ICRISAT has done. Some dates back to the last 40 years. You'll be surprised that ICRISAT, I think I got from Rajesh something like $1 billion for the last 40 years that we've got into research. What has happened to that? What has been the outcome of this money? What has it contributed? What has been the returns to such an investment? $1 billion for the last 40 years. We are starting with the 16 plus jewels. By now, every one of us should understand or appreciate or know. We've seen the jewels of ICRISAT during the launch. We now call them the 16 plus jewels. And we're going to measure. Some have been measured already. We are improving the results or updating the figures. But these are the 16 that the office has been mandated to coordinate with all of you here. You see all these names. You're all involved. It's not an one-man Kizito's office in Impact Assessment Office. So we're going to do this. We have to deliver this. It might need time. It will need time. It needs resources. We need to plan on this. We need to discuss this week.
and agree whether the timeline is realistic and so on. I've already had meetings with most of you, so we need to again enhance this, put this in our planning during the course of the week and in our planning programs, and we deliver this. I believe we owe our partners in enhancing a culture of impact, and by working together, coming together, we'll bring happiness. Thank you.
Wow, I'm exhausted. I don't think we should ever have Dilip and Kizito following each other. That was so much. But don't you get the feeling that staff are just so excited to have everybody here and to really share all these great initiatives? And it's so great to see not only impact assessment, but trying to capture the pathways and efforts that have led to us reaching the impacts. I think we've got time for one question. Is there someone over there?
I think it's very important to highlight the new feature of the impact assessment initiative of ICRISAT, that is the role of an external assessor. It's very important for everybody to realize that we are transforming from the internal assessment to an external assessment, so that the credibility of all of our assessments really are highlighted by the assessment by an outside expert. So I think it's very important to highlight them.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Cynthia, for highlighting that. I think when some of you saw all the names of focal points, you assumed that maybe I'll come back to you and do the studies, but the studies are led by external, basically for obvious reason, to remove the institutional bias and also acceptability with in a wider audience, and also bring some external experts into impact assessment. We are doing that. We have a variety of very qualified persons that are working with ICRISAT to do the work.
Okay. Thanks, Kizito. In the interest of time,